Welcome to Cut Daisies and Unicorns, and we're here. We're here in another rainy day in Chicago.
I wore my Chicago rain gear.
Right.
All right. And so I had my hoodie, and I saw it was raining. There, I might just do this whole episode as a hooded Sith.
So for all the watchers, you should probably switch the camera so they can see you suiting up.
I was at Home Depot today, and there's this really high energy guy.
Yeah.
Who's the outside cart guy and general helper of all people in need.
Yeah. It's always good to have somebody like that.
He joking around and stuff like this. So when I got the fridge for the studio, this guy's like, hey, can I help you put that in your vehicle? I'm like, yeah, sure, and so he did. And then there's been a couple other times we've interacted, but now it's easier to recognize each other because we're not wearing masks. And as I walked in, he goes, hey, I remember you. And I'm like,
you should. You spent a lot of time there.
I have. Time, money, and blood, sweat, and so many tears. But anyway, it was fun. I'm like, I like your outfit. He goes, oh, you mean my Jello suit? Because it's like bright yellow. I have no idea. I'm like, yeah, your rain gear, man. You got the boots going, and he had a little straw hat hanging off the back, and oh yeah. And so he and I were exchanging pleasantries, and he's like, yeah, but I can't swim. I'm like, well, I'm glad you got your suit.
You need some floaties. Got to make sure you're buoyant.
Well, that's Costco. They have those right up front.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will tell you, I don't know, I'll just hinge this on general information for all.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the day when Costco sends their coupons out to everyone, and then the day it starts, the store's really full.
When they push all those items up to the front.
Oh my gosh, dude. And I'm telling you, I was in the self-checkout lane.
Right.
And we were standing 25 deep.
Wow.
Like in line and stuff.
That usually doesn't happen that way.
Not usually.
Yeah. And
I, of course, in the industrial age that we've moved on to, we basically are paying the merchandiser with their product.
Yeah.
But they're becoming more profitable with self-checkout. Now, I will
because they don't have to pay a worker then.
Yeah, they're paying one worker to work 4 stations. Or in Costco's situation, they're paying 3 workers to work 6 stations or something like that. Which I will give them kudos. Their customer service at the self-check is fantastic. Because if you're getting any adult products, i.e. Nick tabs or alcohol, then of course there's the warning.
Check for.
Yeah, they got, and hey, thankfully I've graduated with this gray beardo. They don't even ask me for my ID now.
Right.
But
rarely they do for me either.
They punch in, and then what they put in is they put in the date of it's up to whatever. Yeah. So there I am with 2 pair of shorts and a package of Nick tabs. And people could ask the question, what is a Nick tab?
Right.
And
some people may ask.
And so, Kirkland brand, Costco, Nick tabs. They're the equivalent of, what was that gum? Nicorette? Yeah. And somebody could say, well, why don't you use Nicorette or the off-brand Nicorette? And I'm like, I have an answer for that. It's because it's a pain in the butt to pull those little chew tabs out of the foil wrap.
Right.
So you can get these tubes, and it's 4 milligrams of nicotine.
Right.
Hopefully, in the whole, I mean, gosh, I haven't had a cigarette or tobacco. I remember the last time I had a tobacco product was my 50th birthday. 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
I had a cigar. Only because somebody brought it over, not because I bought it.
Yeah.
Man, I don't think I've smoked cigarettes in 7 years, maybe. And then, so, I mean, good moves there. But people are like, why? I'm like, hey, you know what? As a individual within humanity, looking backwards and being retrospective, I still will say to this day, if I could go back and tell my younger self what never to do, nicotine would be number one on my list.
Yeah, I'd probably say that too for me.
Yeah.
I mean, which is the reason why I also know what nic pills are. Yeah, but I haven't smoked in a long time now.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably, I think you and I quit smoking cigarettes around the same era.
It's about the same time.
7 years ago-ish?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. And, I mean, for anybody out there documenting our smoking history, if we're off by a year or two, just know that I have things pop up on my Facebook memories, and I'm like, that was only 4 years ago? But I do know that I'm 55 in my 56th year in the last tobacco product because I remember smoking that cigar with my buddy, Ben Reed, on the back porch at 42nd Street. And I remember distinctly thinking to myself, oh my gosh, how was I so into smoking cigars? Now, I may have smoked cigarettes long enough that I may have inhaled too much with the cigar, and so got tarry heavy, and
that can end up hurting.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. So,
you want to hit auto on the ATEM there, because currently it's just me on the screen. Which is fine, but I think that the majority of the people who are watching really love to be able to see you too.
So this is said hoodie for Chicago wear, which I mean does really end up being a great move. I learned this move from Phil, because I do have a really cool picture of Phil in a hoodie.
Right. I think that was Des Moines hoodie.
It was Des Moines hoodie, and guess what? I think I took that picture at Miss Kitty's when we were doing a millennial Gen X split, trying to try something different that didn't work out.
Miss Kitty's, that's right. Yeah, that guy. Who owned Miss Kitty's? It was somebody.
Yeah, Bill Clark introduced us.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm friends with him on Facebook.
Okay.
But hey, have you thought of a Facebook purge? Like not purging yourself from Facebook. I mean, we basically practice that.
You're right. Unfortunately.
Yeah, like for instance, when I put the podcast out on Facebook, do you know how many people get to see the podcast advertisement?
No.
5 or 6. When I put a cute little post about my grandson on Facebook, do you know how many likes I got on that? Like
probably a ton.
Yeah, like 135 to 155 last count, which represents 10% of the amount of people I'm friends with on Facebook.
Right.
Which, hey, you know what? I would put it out there that as far as social media, if 10% of the people who I'm friended with are doing 90% of the interaction with me, that's a fair shake out of 1,500 people. 150 people interacting with?
Yeah.
And I would guess that there's somewhere between 25 and 30% of that 1,500 or 1,600 quote-unquote friends.
Yeah.
I think that there should be other designations on Facebook. Like, you know how they have
categories almost?
They have like the family and, and stuff. So I think, like there should be a join button. And then it could be friends, acquaintance, hope to get to know you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something like that.
Yeah, but still met you somewhere along the way and hoping to get you to, that would be a good. So Mark Zuckerberg, take Meta in that direction.
Well, and the crazy thing is like then when you have been in the public arena, which actually Amy and I were having a conversation about this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when bands do concerts,
Yeah.
You know, you got local clubs, then you got music venues, then you got arenas,
Mm-hmm.
then you have stadiums.
Right.
These are all like sizable jumps in the amount of people that can attend your concert.
It's true.
And so, yeah, but I mean, like when you're in the public arena,
Mm-hmm.
not the public stadium,
Right.
you know, that would be more like a regional-esque type of talent. But yeah, when you're in the public arena,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I mean, like there's names that come up. I'm like, oh, I remember somebody talking about that person's name. But what I mean, I can really appreciate there's some of my children's friends who come up as suggestions,
Yeah.
but they never reach out to want to be my friend.
Right.
Well, I'm the kind of person, I'm not reaching out to them for them to be my friend either.
Yeah, I rarely hit friend requests, so like I kind of just leave. I mean, most of the time I'm not on there anyways, but
Right.
it's not like I go on there like, okay, let's find some new friends on the book here. Like, no, I'm just not doing that.
Yeah. And then you get the people who get hacked.
Right.
I think I have 3 Uncle Rons on my hey, he's a great guy, but I know that he hasn't, unless he just forgot his password and
Right.
has
created
had
a new Facebook every time.
every time.
Yeah, I think that's what my dad did. I think he has like 5 Facebooks. I'm like, Dad, I don't even know which one's your Facebook to be able to tell you happy birthday on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like you got 5 of them on there. Like, can you consolidate?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And so, but I have been thinking about like in the sense of minimalism, simplicity,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm probably overdue for some contact address book.
Purge.
Yeah, just go through and be like, probably don't need my old bosses from Capital Mortgage phone numbers.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Or
Mm-hmm.
how about these people?
Mm-hmm.
I was convicted earlier this week. Somebody inundated the Facebook feed with the reason why we have this high gas is Joe Biden. And I'm not bringing this. Just go with me for a minute.
All right, let's do this.
My goal isn't to pick fights. It's not to poke bears. Although, when the little bear is Wesley and you're poking him in the belly button and you get a giggle, giggle, goo. No, I'm just making that up.
Right.
I haven't done that.
Mm-hmm.
So why I'm bringing it up is because I really respect this person
Mm-hmm.
As a person. But their rant about what it's not
Mm-hmm.
then brought me to a place where I'm like, gosh, now I know I can block their feed from showing up on my feed and whatever.
Sure.
But what I was convicted about was how can you have relationship or conversation with people who I'm not even going to say have opposing views. This is how strongly I feel about like just bringing this to light.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about opposing view. It may be about information that you're not interested in. it also could be like, what are you going to do in a situation where, I mean, someone's militant about a thought. That's probably a great generalization, would you say?
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought to myself, what I could do is I could eliminate all the people who don't think like I think and who aren't, like that when I see their posts, it makes me angry. But I thought that goes directly against like the things that we've even talked about.
Right.
But I mean, like some dude with a Russian last name that who knows how that friend request got said yes to. Like, I mean,
right.
Or actually, the bots, they can attach and you didn't even friend them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so hackers of the world unite.
Yeah, so I would still say that's the case too for the Facebook friends. I mean, and that's kind of the reason why I've avoided Facebook much of the time lately, is because it's like, so am I going to go on there and have to be able to look at, I mean, it just seems more like everybody's just ranting about whatever, topic they want to rant about. And it's like, I don't need this. I mean, whether I agree or disagree, I mean, that's really, I'm like, it doesn't matter whether I agree or disagree, but it, like, that seems to be like everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, like, I don't need that.
Well, Need to Breathe went to that concert on what, Saturday?
Saturday?
Yeah, and Bear Reinhardt, it was Into the Mystic acoustical tour, and so like the guys were all sitting on like stools, or short, and when you say all acoustical, there was an electric guitar played, and the keyboards were electrified, and it was violin, mandolin, and shakers and stuff. The drum kit was a kind of, I would call it a hybrid. I think it was an electric kit, but it also was a lot of hand drum percussive things, and like there was a kick, I mean, like it was funny. The bass player Seth, he played a bass uke, and
bass uke.
Oh yeah, they're a real thing. It's nylon strings. It's real dubby, real tubby, but he filled up that room with low end. You're just talking about low end frequency and how but I'm like, wow, it's just so funny that he would pick that, but he didn't want to pick a stand-up bass, and if it's all acoustic, blah blah blah. So anyway, but Bo starts a story out on the song "Difference Maker," and he said, we were putting the album together, and it's the same one. It's the same album that Multiplied's on, which I've done in worship, and just really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And but Difference Maker, when I listen to Difference Maker, I'm like, this is not a worship tune.
Right.
I mean, but there are people in churches singing it as a worship tune. Now,
yeah.
But what direction is worship going? I am a difference maker, And so anyway, he's like, yeah, people ask me what this song's about all the time. And so anyway, the keys player said, hey, we need to take that chorus and that idea and let's develop it. And so they developed it into a song. And he's like, yeah, I'm so glad I did, because it was one of their hits off of that record. And but he's like, basically it just came down to that I'm the one standing in front with a microphone and can use the microphone anyway, because I think one of the lines is, I am the only friend of God. That basically things being pointed, like it's saying, hey, look at me, I'm the difference maker, I have the one truth, I have this, and basically it's a prophetic or a song of the prophet saying, hey, be careful because the power that's given to you, and be careful about what you think you're entitled to.
Right.
So he's going along with that. And then he's like, and now he goes, look in this day and age, and he goes, we all got phones and everybody's got their own microphone, and so it is big rabbit trail back around to the whole thing of, like, here's this platform where my voice can be, is it being heard? I don't know. That's, whatever. So old Steve, cynic, I'm just like, I use it as a tool to get information out. There was a euphoric sense when Facebook was released to the public and it wasn't being used only on universities.
Mm-hmm.
History lesson for the 9-year-old out there.
Right.
There was a euphoric sense of reconnecting with people that I had not connected with in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this sponsored ad, automated intelligence, fact collecting bullshit, is just, There's a swamp that needs to be drained, and we're not talking about D.C. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to draining the swamp there, but there's definitely, I should just stop.
Well, I think that it goes towards mental health, which brings us, back to our, it's still May and it's mental health.
That's our focus this month, yeah.
Yeah, so, much of that, that cycle of doom, and, it really, the news itself is going to get your attention when it's bringing doom versus not. So they know what's going to be as they call clickbait out there for news stories. If they're bringing something shocking or revealing or they know that somebody is going to be prone to clicking on that.
Mm-hmm.
But how much do you get in that cycle of destruction, the cycle of bad news and shocking reveals, and if you get caught in that, man, your head can be sucked down that drain of just I don't know even the best word for it, but whether it's depression or anxiety and worry, fear is all a part of that. Fear sells. But if your brain is caught in that, man, it can leave you in a pretty, poor mental place too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? You have to be careful. I'll keep this on the mental health side of things, but to go off what you just said, you really have to be careful of what content you are bringing in between your ears.
Right.
Us included.
Sure.
Hey, if it works and it's better for you not to listen to us, you're joining a large crowd.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
Right. Because we still, want to is still bring value. We'd like to bring value to people. Whether it's, humor and levity or, things like mental health where we need to be able to, talk through these things and not just ignore them or continue to stigmatize them.
Yeah.
So we'd like to bring value to people. But
Yeah.
but again, if it leads people towards more stress or don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Actually, you could start the hashtag on Cut Daisies and Unicorns if you like. Hashtag not listening for my mental health. I'd be okay with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Not listening or even hashtag not watching.
Oh yeah.
You get the people who watch too. So
right. Yeah.
And that would even go more toward not just video podcasting, but things on TV, like hashtag not watching.
Yeah, and that's my point. Like, there's like I started down the road, and I knew this before I started it. Criminal Minds, just because it was available, and I was looking for a fill gap on something playing in the background.
Right.
Man, I tell you what, and I knew this from having watched it on TV before. That is a dark show,
right,
with some really bad, like, human action stuff that, and what I really can appreciate is like all of the special agents, yeah, and how they end up having to deal with their own mental illness.
Yeah.
And asking each other the question, how do you do this kind of work and not become, the criminal mind?
Right.
But it's so funny. And so, then I'll bop over and, if what I'm watching is all of this espionage stuff with the CIA, and then all of a sudden Washington, D.C. starts calling me. Now, once again, I'm not looking
right
to talk with, interview, or meet with any spies. Not my goal.
Right.
Aliens, open invitation.
We've put that out there.
Like multiple times. Every season.
Right.
It's a continual ask.
Right.
And so, it's just one of those things. But yeah, and I mean I'm not gonna run for government. No.
Yeah. I think I've pretty much committed my life to that too.
Yeah, but you hold public office.
I actually, yeah, I have been voted in, so yeah, that is true. Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is like higher office. I don't even know.
So you're not running for DA next year?
No. I think
you'd have to be an attorney before you could be.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like a Supreme Court judge where you're not required to be a lawyer. Like, that doesn't make sense to me either. But yeah, like you should have to be a lawyer in order to be a judge. But no, you don't. So, but yeah, that's just on another tangent. But
oh yeah. And people are well aware. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Right.
There's just a lot going on, and the information that you let in, it's important. You just got to be careful. I mean, and whether it's the books you're reading, the movies you're watching, the news that you're taking in. And I've landed too where my main news resource is NPR.
Yeah.
And what I really like is the news from the BBC.
Yeah.
Because now what am I getting? It doesn't matter if it's liberal or if it's conservative. I'm actually getting it from a different nation's perspective. And it, you pick up on biases, but we've talked about biases in the past.
Well, that's why I like to be able to poll. I mean, so like the news on the phone, right? You get to pick your sources too. So you could go all the way like you're going to pick the same slant on whatever you do. But I go through and say, all right, well, what news is available to me? And I'm like, well, that one seems right. That one seems left. That one seems this, that. I mean, so like, hey, let's just go with a whole bunch of these, and then let's see what the news is that gets sorted through. So like you're hearing things and on a different perspective as well. But it always like it kind of makes me irritated a bit when somebody's like, yeah, but those still aren't the news sources that you should have. Like, oh, so you're gonna tell me now what it is that the news source that I should have, right? I mean, and then it's usually either like you need to be more left or you need to be more right. And those are the right news source. Like, well, I would disagree with you. Like, I mean, I think that the wide array of choices that I already have here kind of hit a bunch of different perspectives, even if it's not the one that you like.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I still like to be able to consume parts of the news. I rarely ever watch news.
Yeah.
Except when my wife likes to watch the news, and I'm usually have to sit there. And I either have to watch it or read another news story on my phone. But yeah.
Yeah, if you want to Google news sources, there's some great graphs and charts in regards to, I mean, apparently for someone here who's put it together, you know, and they have from left to right, from liberal utter garbage and conspiracy theories to the right side conservative utter garbage / conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sensational, the bottom of the thing is sensational or clickbait, all the way up to complex. And so, like, they would loop the Wall Street Journal in as, mainstream, minimal partisan bias. The Economist, I've never heard of that. The Fiscal Times, The Hill, National Review, Vox, Slate, The Atlantic. And then, like, kind of like, as that's very complex, analytical, and it says it's great in-depth source of news. And then they've got things kind of in the middle, like The Monitor, NPR, BBC, PBS, Washington Post. It's interesting that they put the New York Times, and CBS, ABC, AP, Reuters. But yeah, I don't know. It's super, super interesting on how, all of these, different, again, what you're taking in,
mm-hmm.
what I'm taking in, and we've talked about content, before and
right
and stuff. So, but yeah, I like me a good spy movie, even though I know that it very well could be, just some kind of, hey, is this really? Yeah, I don't know. There's just some intrigue about, the risks being taken and
mm-hmm.
yeah, stuff like that. Enjoy that.
Yeah.
But on our mental health, when it gets to that from the sources that are coming into your mind, that then fear rises up about. I mean, that how do you help somebody move from that? Because you said fear sells. People are selling fear. People are trying to instill fear.
Right.
How do you counsel someone to be able to move into a centered peace within themselves when there's so much craziness going on? And it seems like divisiveness, division, militancy, humanity turning, like we talked a couple episodes ago about how that there's no question that when robots take over the world, they're going to eliminate humanity because we're the worst things for ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's it. So usually when I, and there's been a couple of times, and people would talk about their anxiety levels, and what I would usually call for first would be more of a freeze in all, like consumption.
Yeah.
Like, hey, like here's a moment, like just sit down with a journal instead of jumping on and, scrolling either through Facebook and finding your, the different stories that are put out there, the news, whatever, or jumping on another news source. Like, just have a technology freeze, just put it down and just say, you know what, I'm going to take a break. And here's the key to this. You don't have to tell anybody.
Right.
You don't have to announce it like somebody, like, hey, everybody, this is what, like what I'm doing for my mental health. Like, no. So if you're going to do this for your mental, like, just do it.
Right.
You know, if somebody's really trying to be able to get a hold of you, and if that's the only means, like, you know, like, it's going to be okay. Like, you're going to be fine.
They can get a hold of you.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's a really, really good, I don't know, kind of boots on the ground, since we're using the term militant anyway.
Right.
You know, boots on the ground approach of, you know, to do a freeze.
Mm-hmm.
The thought that was crossing my mind as you were speaking about that was that then a person can ask themselves or their self. They can just talk to their inner person,
Right.
have a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and hope it doesn't get weird. It only gets weird when you're answering yourself
Right.
back out loud when other people are around.
Yeah.
I had to qualify that because I have a common practice of talking to myself out loud when no one's around. But
There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, again, we're trying to take away the perceived stigma. But like, I think a great question is, if you're like, oh, I don't know what I should journal about. Well, how about write down the things that you are addicted to? Because you're saying put a freeze on it.
Yeah.
And don't tell anybody.
Yeah, you don't have to announce it. Like,
Yeah.
Just let it be.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's the thing that's, you know, I mean, because if you're already, like, if this is an addiction, which I think that they even create those within the system. So, like, you put something out there and you want people to see it, you want people to interact with it. And so what your mind is telling you is like, I need that to verify.
Yeah.
And you're like, but do you?
Validate.
Right. Do you
find
need that validation?
Finding your significance.
Right. And that's where, you know, to me, and why I, you know, bring that up is like, that's not your significance.
Yeah.
I mean, because then you can really find yourself in a poor place if like that's the validation that you're seeking.
Yeah.
And that's the only validation, whether it was, I mean, and you can look at any social media, whether it was Facebook or Instagram, because you're putting your stuff out there, usually pictures.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're looking for those likes, or you're looking for the hearts, or you're looking for this or that, I mean, like, and where does it end? And if it's always like, well, hey, like, I got this today, like, I mean, 1,000 people interact. Okay. Like, what does that tell you? Like, people like you? Is that the thing?
Yeah.
I mean, do those 1,000 people know you? Most likely some of them do.
Yeah.
Others don't.
Right.
I mean, but if it ends up being the thing, like, that's why I just think it leads to just bad places.
Yeah. And so, like, that's where, you know, a lot of times when we've talked about addiction in the past, we've talked about chemical addiction, but we have to go back to recognizing that within our humanity, that all of humanity is inclined to be addicted to something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, in that situation concerning social media, it would be an addiction for attention.
Right.
An addiction for approval. And I think that people who work in marketing and branding and who see the analytics and the logs of the statistical information about the attention that's given, you know, you just, you just have to be careful. But I think that if you sit down and you ask yourself, okay, what am I addicted to?
Mm-hmm.
And just write the list, that's a great start.
Yeah.
I don't know that life is without addiction.
No, I think we went over that last week. I mean, everybody's going to be addicted to something. You have to dig through and figure it out. Because what I would also then in that journaling to be able to talk about the things that you're addicted to, and then what does it give you?
Right.
What does that addiction give you?
Yeah.
And what does it take away?
Yeah. Yeah. And at what level or stage?
Right.
I know that in past conversation we talked about my caffeine intake, and the swap and trade for that, but again, I mean, it could be the need for speed, to quote
Top Gun.
In pursuit of that within the next 7 to 10 days, Top Gun Maverick is going to be released.
It is.
So I got the need for speed.
Yeah, I heard some good reviews about that so far too. Even I know it's a tangent, but
yeah, but
not a huge Tom Cruise fan, but
but if people like fast cars,
right,
and like a fast car, and or jumping off of a bridge with a bungee cord, or just adrenaline junkie, kind of thing. Gosh, whether it's sweets, whether it's savories, I mean, we get into the food, parts, and I mean, and the list just goes on. You and I talked about adversely not being addicted to silence, but filling space.
Yep.
Rested my weary body last night and ended up binging Lincoln Lawyer, the reboot. And that dude thinks well when he's in motion.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I can identify with that. It might not be in a car,
right? But something's moving.
Life in motion.
Right. Yeah,
something's moving.
Me too.
And I can take that back to where I, for a long time, have declared that I'm a water baby. I really like it around water. I like the motion of water. I like water in a river, and I like water in the big lake. And and so, but I don't know. Wholeness and balance. That's where you have to flip on your chart and you start drawing some things, and you're asking the question of what does balance look like for me in my life. Me personally, I wouldn't necessarily ascribe to, like, I know what you were saying about social media. You don't have to go out there and be like, hey, everybody, I'm going to take a break, and neon sign, the whole thing. But to the authenticity of emotion into a freeze without attention given to it, But what I would also encourage people to do is to talk to somebody about it.
Sure. Which is not a bad idea.
So that there's that communication. Hey, there's this area in my life I'm concerned about, or there's something going on in me that I can't source the root of. And yeah, and that's really been a really cool over the years. 3 short ones as they are that I really appreciate about Amy in my conversation. And, she even noticed in me about how pressure and anxiety are triggering parts for me to go off the rails.
Yeah.
And, one time she just brought it up and blurted it out, and I was like, wow, I've never really considered that. In Lincoln Lawyer, they deal with addiction, chemical addiction.
Yeah.
He's was in an accident and then got addicted to opioids, and then he's on a path of sobriety. of about 18 months, and his driver, that he gets off the docket for like grand theft or something like that. Then they get into conversation, and it's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black, in that as both addicts, and it's an interesting. This is not a spoiler alert.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thread how each person to each other comes in at places of weakness. It really beautiful storyline on Community.
Yeah.
And so, it just is one of those things where, but now when I can feel, and we use the term in our home, spinning, not the plate spinning idea,
right.
but like when there is a whirling about going on, before I would call it, what I would not call it as anxiety, is I would call it a sense of being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Transition to post-pandemic, I struggled a lot with freeze-ups in regards to being overwhelmed by being overstimulated. And it could be a combination of things stack up. It doesn't have to be like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other.
Right.
Or trying to play match game, and, where you flip over the cards and you're trying to match the things that match.
Mm-hmm.
It could be demands on time. It could be responsibilities. Then it could be, overextension, which is me saying I'm saying yes to everyone, and I'm not saying no to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where does that root to? I'm taking, folks, as I'm talking through this, I'm walking you through a process of that on that list, work that list backwards into, if you're a yes person, you're a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
And, in that, if you are overcapacitated by saying yes to the people who are asking,
right,
then when you're whirling and you're spinning and you wonder, why in the world are you self-medicating?
Mm-hmm.
And so the self-medication isn't the problem.
Right.
It's the inability to say no. Mm-hmm. Or what is your best yes? Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a lot there that there over the years that we've learned together, we've learned apart, we continue to hone in one another too.
Right. Yeah, because I would always, we're dealing with any addiction issues, there's always something underneath it. It's not just like, oh, I got hooked on killers, pain pills.
The pillars of pain killers.
Right? I mean, it's, hey, I just got this crazy, like, Coke addiction, and, nothing's going on. I just love Coke, Like, no, it's, there's always something that there's underneath it, and I've never found it to be the case that there's just an addiction. It's always like an addiction that was covering. It was an addiction that was, there was always something.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories to tell, and this is back in a really rough part of my life, and there's public service announcement for this episode. Okay, just to let everybody know.
It's a PSA, everybody.
Public service announcement. There's a large part of my story that I won't talk about on here.
Yeah.
And it's purely out of an act of dignity. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid of having a personal conversation with folks about my story.
Yeah.
But because of who my story impacts, I'm just not willing to put it out there on this forum.
For sure.
That's me saying no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I, certainly there's been glimpses and little things have come out over our 5 seasons of, different things at different comfort levels where I'm at. But
yeah,
I realized back in the day that, like, one of the things that really made my eyes get wide open I didn't think I was living in a risk-filled life or that my behavior was risky behavior. But when I walked away from a party one night and people were walking out of the bathroom with powder on their nose and they were like, hey, do you want some Coke? It was this warning sign to me that if they felt, now they were all coked out. So, I mean, like, but they weren't 100% on their senses.
Right.
But it all of a sudden dawned on me that if they felt comfortable enough to offer me Coke, I was probably in situations that were high risk. And even though I was in a headspace to say no that night, would I always be in the right headspace
to say no?
To say no. And I think that what you can't count for is the unseen.
Right.
And that is how your brain waves change over time. And what may seem as risky behavior at one point, further down the road, it doesn't seem as risky. And so that being said, and that is one of the things. And so Jeff Foxworthy, here's your sign. If we're going to go all, country humor, whatever.
I think that might be Bill Engvall. Engvall is one of those.
Oh.
I think he's in the same, it's the same blue collar comedy. But
Yeah.
I think he's here's your sign.
Yeah. Well, anyway, these guys.
These guys.
Look
at these guys.
But I would say that if we're going to go back off of chemical, and then we're going to move into what about pressures? What about fear? What things are the build-ups towards? Gosh, dude, I know some people struggle with shopping.
Right.
And another for instance, when I worked at Gloria Day, I had a sizable expense account. And when I noticed that with that kind of expense account, when people are coming and saying, hey, I need this, and you're buying it, and you're buying it, and you're buying it, and, it's like Christmas every month of the year,
right.
And stuff like that, that then you have to be careful. Or then when the shopping is lower, but you're used to doing the shopping, then all of a sudden you're just sucked in, and I'm on a need to replace purchase pattern right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm out of gaff tape.
Yeah.
I'll order a couple rolls in. I wasn't looking on Amazon and being like, well, I haven't bought gaff tape in a while, right. Add to that stockpile, and stuff like that. I've got one pair of boots. They're fries, they're lace-ups. I love them. I really want another pair. But, why am I not buying it? Well, I think they're discontinued.
There is a reason right there then.
But I'm not scrolling
right.
And trolling and trying to find the release item for what that is. And, so shopping, we talked about food. Time management or the lack of it, can, again, people be like, well, if you watch that much TV, man, you're not doing anything. Well, no, that's not true.
Right.
That's not true. When my day's a 20-hour day and I decide to watch 9 episodes of Lincoln Lawyer,
it doesn't mean that there's nothing else occurring.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, how come he can't sit still and quiet?
Right.
Well,
and we've already talked about that. Like, it's
right.
It's a thing.
Yeah. I mean, and so the idea isn't to say, "Hey, write a list of addictions," and then but if you're living in fear,
Mm-hmm.
if you're prone to being angry at everyone else,
Right.
if you recognize that what's going on in you is that you're overwhelmed or you're anxious,
Right.
that's just one step you could take.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Might be time for a freeze. Take some time, reflect. No, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, and it's hard. I'm not like, because I've also, I mean, because even though I've known, like, I don't like to sit in silence. And so but I also haven't done a lot of work in order to get to the place of being able to say why. I'm like, I already know it exists.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like silence. I like things that are, I mean, there's always noise, things that are happening. So, but I don't know. Yeah, so I mean, maybe it's an opportunity to say, hey, like, let's figure out the silence issue. What's it going to take for me to figure out a silence issue? And probably hearing my own, advice and being able to do something about it. But yeah, but some of the technology I also, because I use for, work.
Yeah.
So it's hard to be able to also cut things out that I'd also need for a job. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in that situation, solving for solution is, even just practicing that of during a certain time of the day
Mm-hmm.
that you would normally, because I'm a natural path guy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you would normally be like, I have this need, or even ask yourself, hey, self, the next time I'm in a situation where I'm just turning on noise or creating motion because there's something in me gnawing at me,
Yeah.
yellow flag me. Folks, you'd be amazed at how yourself will start helping you to take care of you.
Hmm.
And so then you got this situation, and it comes up, and I'm like, man, there's gnawing. Like, I move into a place of, like, if I get this gnawing irritableness going on, I start asking myself 3 questions. I'm like, hey, dude, are you hungry? When's the last time you had any food?
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time you had something nutritious?
Hmm.
When was the last time you drank a glass of water? When's the last time you actually sat down and rested for 15 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, those are all great questions.
Those are good questions.
Instead of reaching for a can of beer.
Right.
Or instead of, starting the next episode.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I mean, that's something that I'm doing right now is I'm just asking myself, and a healthy replacement thing.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about ginger ale.
Yeah.
But I do find a cold carbonated beverage. It's not about drinking the beer.
Yeah. So
right. But there is a trained, Pavlovian response to this is rising up in me, and this is what I have naturally turned to.
Right.
And like I even put a time frame. I'm not a day drinker.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to last the day, I can't start during the day.
Yeah.
And so limitations. I'm like, all right. Some people's happy hour can start at 4:30 or 5. Not me.
Right.
And on the flip side, but these are all, when you walk into a Benny's,
mm-hmm.
there's no limit of all different kinds of alcohol.
Right.
Haven't bought a bottle of tequila in a long time. I haven't bought, For me,
Right.
and that's where I'm speaking from, is for me,
Right.
you know, and, you know, it just is those things. And yet, you know, people will be like, well, you know, 12-step that shit and, you know, move on. And I'm like, it's complicated.
Right.
You know, on the flip side, if my need for success in a pottery studio drives me to the place where I'm not taking care of myself, what's the problem? Is it the pottery studio?
Right.
No.
No.
And I'm just using those examples,
Yeah.
speaking from my own self, because I don't know what's in the head of the listener.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the work. If you're like, I don't even know what I journal about. Well, pick up a pen and just sit down and start asking these questions.
Right.
You know, and so.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to start, is being able to ask questions and to be able, I mean, and you'd have to say you also have to be honest with yourself. So if you make a deal with yourself about being honest with yourself, it's a good place to start. Yeah. I'm going to be honest about this, you know, like, because you don't have to show anybody. Like, this is your time, your journal, your whatever, and you're going to take the time to, you know, do it. I mean, if there's something that you're trying to work through, what's the best way to work through something? Actually work through it.
Well, and so, like, I move into a place in my mind where I start thinking about, like, if there's a person who's listening to the podcast that doesn't believe in a higher power as they would know it.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, this sounds like, you know what, here's what I trust. I trust that by you sitting down in quiet and reflecting within yourself, looking at in the past month and the past 2 months, what are the outcomes of your actions? What's weighing heavy on you? Write that question down. What's weighing heavy on me? What are my trigger points that move me to ... And the ... would be you fill in the blank of what causes you to go on an eating binge. What causes you to be numbed out with chemical? What are the triggers? And this is a really good point from Lincoln Lawyer. Again, not a spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But you know, you got to find out the source of the pain. And you know, and he comes to the realization of what the source of his pain was. And boy, I mean, that was just a really healthy aha awareness, you know, and you know, and you'll have to watch it to find out. But you know, just start asking questions, and just, if you're a person who says, you know, I don't believe in a higher power, I don't believe in God, I really don't have like any on that side, is not a part that I interact with, that I trust that when you ask yourself questions, the answers to the questions will come to your mind. And you're like, I don't believe you. And I would say, I
try it first.
Yeah, just try it.
Yeah, and I would say that there's also, I mean, you know, we look at there's other ways in which you can do this as well. I mean, whether it is, I mean, if it's chemical, you know, there are NAs and AAs and you know, where I would say that those are a lot of programs for kind of a more of a group mentality. You know, for abuse, there's places to be able to sit in groups, right? It's that there are places where if you're saying I don't know how to start, there's counselors, there's psychologists, there's a whole array of that too. You know, and just be open to say, so what is it that I think that I might need right now?
Yeah.
Because if you do, I mean, it's a good place to start, is sit down individually, ask yourself questions. But if you're saying, I'm coming to an end, I don't know what I don't know, I don't know where, like, then maybe you need to bring somebody in the mix and say, yeah. I mean, we talked a little bit about bringing somebody in as well, but there's lots of those somebodies out there and lots of different avenues. So don't be afraid to do it. Don't be afraid to reach out.
And you know what? I feel like, because just recently I went to the eye doctor, and I feel like if I said to my doctor, you know what, my sight, I think it's probably 85 to 90% of what it was last year. I'm cool, like, let's go ahead and do glasses. But I think if I said to my eye doctor, but you know what, doc, I've just had low energy and fatigue. I don't know if it has to do with my eyesight or if it has to do with my general health.
Yeah.
I think that doctor would have taken that as an open door to point me into a direction that he thought would be beneficial for my health overall.
Right.
Flip it around the other way. I haven't been to my general physician, so I can't use that as a current example right now. But I know I have had conversations in the past with my general physician. I at the time, I told the story about my counselor. When I was seeing my counselor, when there was a time when I physically wasn't feeling well, his recommendation was to send me to a general practitioner.
Yeah.
The people in physical health care are, especially amidst pandemic and everything going on in the world right now, I think people are more in tune, and willing to point out. And hopefully if you're, a teacher, you're involved in educational system, that you can be that voice, when you identify someone's change of personality, or not personality, but change of their emotional place of being. Somebody who's generally happy is sad, or somebody who's generally steady and then having angry outbursts or acting out against another student, and things like that. So to your point, I just, I concur.
Right.
And I think on the other side, as people who are friends to other people, I think what we're also calling for is we're calling for an increased awareness of observation.
Right.
And being willing to enter into a crucial conversation if we see changes.
Right.
And doing it from a seat of love and care and concern. And you may ask a person if they need help, and they may say 3 times no, but the 4th time they said yes. I watched a documentary, Alaska Nets. It was about 2018 basketball team out of Alaska, and it was the I won't do the spoiler alert on it, but it basically a documentary that followed this from this island in Alaska, and lumber and fisheries were a major portion and part of the income. Diving for urchins and clams. And but this town just all rallied around basketball. But the amount of mental health that was going on, and it just was really cool to see the basketball coach, be able to, tell these players, hey, I'm proud of you. I love you. If you need help, ask for it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes out of that movie was when the coach was like, y'all got to you got to stop being so thin-skinned. Just because somebody says something to you doesn't mean you have to go pout, and we're talking about high schoolers, but the emotional quotient at the time was, like the individualism and how people were very proud people and proud of themselves, that when somebody was critical of them, that they took great personal offense by it. And culturally, I'm sure it's a lot different from how I grew up.
Yeah.
And so, but again, what are we going to do to, be aware of the people in your surroundings.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. And then hopefully you have that, where you have at least someone in your life where you're saying, hey, so I'm going to give you permission to interrupt. So there's hopefully those opportunities that you've also given to somebody else in relationship to, to do that. And I think, I think that's always a good thing. Because that's also then gives people a little bit more freedom. Friends, loved ones around you that are like, hey, I don't mind. You've given me an invitation. I've given you an invitation. And so now I'm going to take that step and I'm going to tell you, like, here's what I'm seeing. And yeah, so don't be afraid. Step in.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
All
Nope,
right.
not at all.
Well.
Yeah. So can you believe this is like episode 10?
Episode 10.
We're wrapping up season 5.
We are. We are. And I think we're, after we finish up right here, then the next thing is we'll shoot the Friday trailer. Mm-hmm. Actually, I'm picking up a U-Haul and starting a road trip to Atlanta. We're going to a trade show to sell a bunch of dresses. Mm-hmm. And so I will not be wearing a dress.
That's a promise.
No shaving of the legs, although, not necessary to wear a dress. But the... so when this is going to be on autopilot going into the weekend, but I think what Phil and I are going to do is take a look at the calendar and find the reasonable time for a live show.
Right.
To see when that will work out.
Because it's been a little bit.
It has been. Mm-hmm. Probably almost 6 months.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that. I'm not sure how we do it, so that we can be able to do it where we're doing live, but we're still able to have, what we may have to do?
You mean like in a live audience too? Or
in a live audience. But I'm wondering if what we need to do is pull the other soundboard, and then we can handle our live feed through one mix, and then or set up like our auxes here, where one aux is going out to where we're doing our feed, and then we're able to be live with what's going on here.
Yeah.
So because that would be cool to be able to have a live audience, have a microphone set up for people to walk up and ask questions and.
Sure.
And do that.
Sounds fun to me.
The other thing that we need to brainstorm, because we've gone for a stretch where it's Phil and Steve editions, is we probably should brainstorm
finding some guests again.
Guests, yeah. And as much as we're committed to getting the work done and being able to do that. Then there's the combination of people's schedules and
right.
Yeah,
that's always the hard one for when we're shooting the podcast.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So 10 episodes.
10.
but it feels good.
Are here.
It feels good.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to believe that we went so long without doing episodes, and then now we've done 10, but it's been 10 in a row. So it's only been 10 weeks we've been doing this.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
And summer's coming.
It is.
Like a freight train.
And last week it felt like summer. This week is now still back at, 57 degrees.
Yeah, it's beautiful out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as always, feedback. Would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Yeah, and even if there's somebody there who's listening or watching who's like, I don't really know what to say, then just say hi. Do that. Send an email to cutdaisiesandunicorns@gmail.com. Just say hi.
Hello. And we'll say hello back.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how the exchange works.
There you go.
So feel free to reach out to us too.
And free Phil. I'll hold it.
Free Phil. Free.
Feel free.
Feel free. That's why I was wondering where are you going with that?
Well, it was feel free.
Feel free.
I didn't think saying feel Phil was really appropriate. So then I went to free Phil.
Free Phil.
Free Phil.
Yep. So it's time to hashtag free Phil.
This purgatory that I'm in. Yeah. All right, everybody.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Since this will be Sunday.
Yeah, and we won't be around for the holiday weekend.
Nope.
So have a great Memorial Day weekend and all of the celebrations of that. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see you shortly after that. We'll always keep you in the loop about when we're going to do a live show.
You know what I always wonder is when we start saying goodbye.
Yeah.
To when we actually say goodbye.
What's the time frame?
I'm wondering how many people will be like, they're just going to be, just saying goodbye for the next 10 minutes. So I'm going to shut this off. And then somebody's like, that is not my voice. That is not how I sound in my head. But if you shut it off, you didn't get that, did ya?
Right. You miss out. You're always going to miss out when you shut it off before we're done.
Don't
do it.
Don't. But if you're going to do something, free Phil.
Yeah. Hashtag.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody.